Hello and welcome to this FA webinar on the importance of individual techniques and tactics for futsal and football. My name's Ian Parks and I'll be hosting the discussions today. I'm a youth coach developer with an additional responsibility to support clubs and coaches who use futsal in their academies. Today I'm joined by Mike Skubala, England Futsal Head Coach, and Graeme Carrick, another youth coach developer with the additional responsibility of leading on the technical development of players across the youth development phase. Hi guys, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good. Top stuff. So the session today, hopefully the first of a short series, which is going to aim to highlight the importance of observing and coaching the detail within small group work, which for futsal is simply the building blocks to the game because it's only 5v5. But also into football, we're looking to highlight the importance of coaching individuals and small groups to better help the wider tactics. We're going to start with the individual today, but we hope to have similar discussions on separate webinars, which will look at pairs, threes and fours moving forward. So do look out for those on the YouTube channel. So on to today. The plan is that the first half of the discussion will look at 3 individual techniques, which are vital in futsal. We'll interrogate some footage, and then in the second half, we'll look at a football clip in a similar way, talking about how we can observe and hopefully coach individual techniques and tactics within the 11v11 game. So Scoobs, to get us started on the futsal content, do you want to take us through the next couple of slides?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I think really this is, just a good chance to chat around individual technique and tactics and how probably they combine. But I think one thing we do in futsal is obviously work with those smaller numbers and really do go in a sort of zoom lens with futsal really. So just as an overview, really, we have the England Futsal game moments, or the MOGs as I call them, in terms of the phases of the game, similar to football, in possession, out of possession, transition. I call it positive when you come with the ball and negative when you lose the ball. And then we have set plays in and out of possession, but we also have something called special plays. And this is when we can use the fly keeper in and out of possession, which is just basically bringing an extra attacker on, or the keeper comes and plays. We have strategies and tactics around that. And then also when we go a man down, so we have to deal sometimes with a man down in a 4v3 or 3v4 situation. And along that, really, these moments can happen anywhere on the court. So the back third, the middle third, or the attacking third, as we call them. And it's how we fit all of these game moments into it. So that gives us a good overview. And today we're going to really focus on the individual tactics and techniques within futsal and the individual stuff within the in possession sort of moment, really. But just to sort of show what we would call the development pyramid in futsal and how we would build our concepts. And really, for me, a concept is a technical action with a tactical outcome. So you can pass a ball technically, but then if you put it into a game, how do you get the tactical outcome from that? So we're really working on the sort of bottom of the pyramid today about 1v1. Well, not 1v1s, but individuals. What we call it 1v1s, but we mean individual technical and tactical actions. And you need that as your base in order to move through to being able to do it in a pairs or a twos, like you mentioned. And then in futsal, you need that to do it as a 3. And then we go into our systems, and then we go into our game strategy. We think in futsal that if you don't have these individual and paired tactical actions, if you like, or threshold concepts, then it's very hard to then put a system in place. I don't know, Cara, if you've got anything around that in terms of football side of things.
Yeah, absolutely the same way of thinking in terms of your team tactics are going to be determined by the individual and collective capabilities of your team ultimately. And through the work Pete Sturgis has done in the foundation phase, it's really important that we continue to shine light on the individual techniques and tactics, as well as looking at the overall team tactics. So yeah, it fits and marries up really well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things for me is like working in futsal, with probably a different lens, is that we sometimes quite want to go to the system to try and fix it, but actually you might actually move back down the pyramid to control the situation or fix the problem to then be able to move back up with the pyramid. So a player in a 3-1 or 4-0 system in futsal, that might be the tactical overview that they're not getting, but it might be because their twos movement or their individual movement is actually not right in that area. So it allows you to drop up and down the pyramid.
Yeah, I think that's vital, Scoobs. And I think, as you say, we can look to fix the systems or focus the coaching around that. One of the things is when players are ready to move on, if you like, up to the next layer, that you don't just forget about what they've just done, and the individual tactics and techniques still need to be refined all the way through, regardless of age, that the best players will still be searching to find those bits of refinement. So we can't neglect it and think we've moved past it. As you say, you can move up and down that continually.
Yeah, and you need to keep revisiting it. Like you say, I think sometimes we get caught up on this is an age thing and you move through your stages as your age group, but actually it's probably more about every player's journey where you can move up and down it. So it's just a little overview, really. And then probably the difference here is, I see it as the club does the bottom end of the pyramid, but actually at international level, because of we only get 8%, 9%, 10% of a player's time, we probably work top down. So we probably have to concentrate on winning, concentrate on the strategies, concentrate on the systems. But ultimately, we need players that can be doing the individual and pairs and threes tactics. This is another just quick overview. Really works similar to football. We divide the court into 4 channels or 4 lanes. Some other countries will do 3 lanes in futsal, but we do it in 4. This just gives you an overview of what we're going to be talking about and where 1v1s, 2s, 2v2s, playing beyond, playing into, combining in the middle area of the court, that we'll probably look at in terms of some footage and go on to talk about techniques of why and how we do that.
Good stuff. Okay, so on to the individual techniques and tactics themselves. These are the 6 core techniques which for us form the basis of individual development in futsal. You'll notice there are 5 in possession and 1 out of possession. And we think that's really important to recognise that in futsal, where you're often matched up, you need to be able to defend in 1v1 situations. So getting pressure on the ball, what angle do you approach at, what distance do you get to, what body shape do you need, all these things, as well as the decisions that the individual's got to make about when to engage, when to delay, when to block passing lines. We think it's really important that that's part of one of the 6 core techniques. But we haven't got time to talk about them all today, so we'll look at the yellow ones. They're the ones we're going to focus on. And moving and feinting's at the top. This is the only one of these which is probably a little bit different to the football techniques that you'd probably see. But for us in futsal, this is absolutely essential. The game's faster, there's less space, players have got to make quicker decisions. So the ability for a player to be able to move and feint to, some people call it create or control space, is absolutely vital. Now, whether they're controlling their own space or they're trying to create space for other people, this moving and feinting that really helps them with that. I think the other thing to mention, which Scoobs touched on earlier, is they're called techniques and tactics. And I think it's important that we can't isolate the techniques from the tactics, because I think we're probably going to talk a bit about perception and decision making over the next half an hour or so. But what the players see and how this affects what they decide is really important before they even execute what they're going to do. So it's vital, because depending on what the player sees, this will inform how they choose to move or feint, for example, or how they choose to control the ball. I think individual tactics as well linked to knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your opponent. So if you know, for example, the defender is always going to try and get to you quickly, then that's going to affect how you control the ball, because you might try and beat them with your first touch. Or I know when a player was always tight to me, I'd feel that and I'd roll them. So I think you can't separate the individual techniques and tactics. Anything to add there, Scoos, before we get into the detail of those top 3?
No, for me, I think sometimes the individual technique is obviously the pass and the control, the moving and feinting, and we put a lot of emphasis and we really bullseye that moving and feinting. But ultimately, I think every one is about gaining an advantage over your opposite opponent. How you choose to select them, your toolbox is really key. But ultimately, we say, how do you gain an advantage against your opposite opponent in these sort of techniques? Brilliant,
Cara. Anything from you on that?
No, same. Where it's the intention, isn't it? As you're saying, to gain the advantage, to maximise the picture, the situation, whatever that looks like, and the technique's one part of that. But it is got to be within the thinking and the decision making, the tactical aspect of the game.
Yeah, like just facing forward could be a technical advantage, for example, and receiving it to get on it to face forward could give you huge benefits.
Good stuff. So on to moving and feinting. It's the first one we're going to look at. The idea of this slide, and there'll be a similar one at the start of each technique, is just really to show the things that a coach might want to observe, or think about linked to the particular topic. So in this case, the top box, fundamentals, body control, how a player controls their body when they're moving, their agility, the balance, coordination, speed. This is going to be really important in terms of having fluid movement that potentially increases the rate of disguise, being able to stop quickly, start quickly. That's really important that a coach can really look at that. And then, as I touched on earlier, this is all really with the ultimate aim of creating space. And as the two boxes there, you can either create space or control space, or some people call it molding space for yourself or for your teammates. And I think you're probably, you mentioned receiving to play forwards there, Scoobs. You're probably trying to create space either to receive in front of the defenders to be able to play forwards, probably looking to receive between players, maybe to suck defenders in to be able to play somewhere else where there's space, or just to confuse them really, or behind them. And I know in futsal there's no offsides, but even in football we know there are areas on the pitch where you can play behind players and get on blind spots in some really good spaces. And that's probably some of the stuff we'll look at in the video, which is about to follow. But I think the other thing I want to mention on these slides that you'll notice is this idea of being able to do it off both sides. And again, you'll see this on all the technique slides, because we think this is really important to try and help players be able to do this. In futsal, there's limited space that players need to be able to go both ways. Otherwise, they reduce their space even further. So in terms of moving and feinting, it might be, can they open up across both sides of the court, or can they feint both ways just to add more disguise to their opponent? And then, go on.
I was going to say, I think this is where small-sided games are really, really important and really key for the, if you like, for the 11v11 game. I know we're going to concentrate on futsal, but the space is at a premium. So I think the thing that in this moving and feinting, we can be with or without the ball. So you can do the same things with or without the ball laterally. But we're talking predominantly going to be talking about off the ball, if you like, movement. But it's absolutely key that if you get that first phase right, that you create space or mold space, as you say. But I think space is at a premium. So you have to work really hard or really clever to create space.
Yeah, brilliant. And again, perception, decision down that side. We've talked about it already. This is, for me, the tactical element of the technique, which will essentially determine where a player decides to move, how they decide to move. That's going to be based on the opposition, the teammates, pressure on the ball. That's really important when trying to work out how to help your mate, at what angle you get to. So, perception decision is going to be considered throughout. Right, Scoob, shall we get onto the clips and have a look?
Yeah, so I think we'll just, if we can just zoom in on probably, if we play the clip and zoom in on number 14, Wallace here. So if we're talking about moving in, feinting, not really on the ball, but what does he do off the ball? So as you'll notice, he's moving quite a lot to try and create himself, or mould, if you like you use the term, mould himself some space. He's quite cleverly operating here. It looks like he's not doing a lot, but actually he's opening passing lines.
And like you said, some of it's between players, some of it's in front of players, sometimes he goes behind players.
Yep, and being able to play in tight areas in between lines, behind lines, and then other players threaten him to go beyond and probably should have scored. But I think it's just a great example about, we call it moving with efficiency. So you don't always have to be moving really hard when you're moving and feinting, but how do you move efficiently?
I think Scoobs as well, it's about, and certainly a lesson for football, it's often doesn't need to be big movements. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's the small, subtle movements that buy you the space or create the possibilities. That's all you need, whether it be, as you use the term, like feint in football, we might say checking off, or the similar language meaning the same things. That might be all you need to buy that little moment of space, or to change the picture, or to manipulate the picture how you want it.
Yeah, 100%. So I've paused it here. If you see Wallace's head, the number 14, he's looking at the ball. His first thing he's going to perceive here is, what is the pressure on the ball? The pressure's not great on the ball, so he's now going to try and attack what we say, attack the first line, influence the second. So if he can attack the defender's number 5, and he'll notice that he gets enough of his back to create himself enough of a space. And we call that the cat and mouse, the game in the advantage. The show to go is probably in the football terms, but he's created enough space here to support under the ball. So there's little things that are going on with his moving and feinting I think are brilliant, and he's really good at this. Again, so that movement there is probably a bigger movement, Cara, but he's driving the first line away. Yeah. So what we would call that cutting cutting after the ball or cutting without the ball. But what he's really doing there is opening a safe pass so we can build up the court. So it's part of the in-possession building phase.
Yeah, that's the case, because some of this movement's coming before to get on the ball, isn't it? And the feinting, and some of it's coming afterwards, and some of it's coming when you might not be even not part of it, but you might be off the ball, like you said. You might not have passed, you might not be the one receiving, but you're still moving. Yeah,
and then something again like this clever movement here. He's checked, got himself another 2 meters, and if you think about 2 meters in this type of area, it's quite hard to gain. But this is what he's helping the ball out of pressure here. Like a helping pass or a field pass.
Scoobs, as well, you mentioned earlier about first line and second line. What did you mean by that? Just for those that aren't so sure.
So when we're building, if you like, building the attack or building play, the first line of defence is the pressure on the ball, and then maybe the other player to make it like a 2v2 situation. So first thing that the individuals need to recognise is we go through a chart. What's the pressure on the ball? That's your perception. Once you can gauge what pressure on the ball is, you then look at what your teammate's foot is, and then your movement needs to be taken really off spaces and gaps. How tight someone is to you. So sometimes you want people tight to be able to go in behind. But ultimately, every reference point comes from what is the pressure on the ball and how you can move off that.
I think in all this, timing's absolutely vital as well, isn't it? Not just the type of movement, but when you come off, or when getting that right can make such a difference to the space that you buy yourself or the picture that you create.
Yeah.
So the thing to explore around how much space do you need, or where's your force field? When are you close enough to attach it or entice a defender, either for yourself or for somebody else, or when you're trying to detach to give yourself room? There's been 3 or 4 examples of both of those within this clip.
Yeah, I think this last clip's really interesting because he's in the first line. He knows there's a support pass behind him, and the danger here for the defender is that if Cookie, the guy in the yellow boots, plays a diagonal pass, he's won that race in there. So ultimately, the defender here has to go with him, and by doing that, he's again created some more space in between the lines, and then he can support the ball on a diagonal, another little paired movement, and then they're out of pressure and they've broke. So then we've got a 2v1, and you could say we've won. Then should have scored probably.
That's good. Now, linked to something you said, Cara, about the timing of it. It's interesting that sometimes, Scoobs, you mentioned he was watching his teammate with the ball, but he's also, the timing of his movement to go and help is when the player who's marking him, he's almost watching, as that player steps back, he steps the other way. So it's being aware of watching both your player, but also your immediate marker. Yeah, and I think that's it. You look at the ball, you look at your immediate marker, you think about how you're going to attack with your movement and feinting strategy. So we say something double movement. Your first movement is for your defender. Your second movement is for you to get on it. So it's a little sort of reminder, 1 movement for them, 2 movements for you. So good luck. Link to that.
I think, sorry, Parks, I was just going to say, because a big thing around the timing as well is around deception, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're trying to show your intention to your teammate, but you're trying to hide your intentions from your opponent. Or in that last clip where you're trying to bring defenders together to create space somewhere else.
Yeah.
All things, it's all quite subtle often.
I think sometimes, you're so right, Carol, because I think sometimes what good futsal players will do will earn their individuals back by closing their hips off to the ball. So basically the defender, the reference point is, wow, if he gets a run on me behind here, I cannot win this race. So sometimes we talk about open your hips to receive, close your hips to deceive. So you close your hips to deceive to earn in the back. And actually, then when the defenders took 1 or 2 steps to cover that, you can then open and receive again with more space.
Yeah.
So, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, for me, I mean, just when I played, if someone was running in a straight direction, you think they're going, you have to go with them. When a player used to just kind of stand side on and make a shift and go back, you knew they weren't going anywhere. As soon as they turned to actually run forwards, that's when you went with them, and then they came back. So I think that's what you're talking about with the hips.
Yeah, and I think part of it is understanding their role and what their responsibilities are, and almost, as you're saying, Parks, you're maximising that, because if you run straight, he's got to go with you, or your opponent has to go. So that's their job. So you're almost using them doing their job.
Yeah.
To create yourself the moment that you want.
Yeah, that's so key. Like you say, know your opposite teammate's job. What has he actually got to do to defend you? Because then you can exploit that. Yeah, great point.
Thanks for that, guys. That's good. Now, this is just a summary slide for you guys who are watching to have a look back in your own time at some of the things that might have been talked about and maybe some of the things that didn't come up. But this is just for you to look back in your own time. We're not going to go through this in any more detail.
Just to jump into cutting off the ball, we basically mean moving off the ball, but that could become before the ball is passed or after it. So we just use the term cutting or running through, but it also means cutting across the passing line of where you think the ball is going. So that basically drags players where you want them to be. So it's just probably a term that we use in futsal that maybe football doesn't use so much. Sorry, Fox.
No, it's perfect. Thanks. So control, again, we're just going to follow this same format, if you like, through the 3 techniques. But so similar aspects, the ability to control with both feet is really going to help in tight areas. It's going to keep your defender guessing. The perceptions, decisions down that side, they're going to impact which type of control you use. I think I gave an example earlier, actually, of if someone's tight, you might try and beat them, or if they're tight, you might roll them. So that's still going to be important with every technique. In terms of the technique itself, we split this down into 2 areas or 2 reasons maybe that players would receive. Firstly, to secure the ball and secure it so they can play forwards as well. Now, this might be a moving touch to create new angles or break lines. It could be a stop touch or a feint touch to kind of engage the defender. And then in terms of protection, we've got control to protect. So it might simply be controlling on the safe side as an inverted winger. So what I mean by that is if you're playing on the opposite side and someone's tight, you might just control it to be safe. Or slightly more conventional protection is if you're a striker or a pivot, as you call them in futsal, playing with your back to goal, then you're going to receive to protect the ball to either set somebody off or turn to shoot yourself. So that just sets the scene. Scoobs, anything on that before we go into the clips?
No, I think we break control down into probably sort of 4 key areas, really. We call it oriented control to attack the ball. So people talk a lot in futsal about how you use your soul and you must always use your soul. Well, actually, you don't always have to use your soul. That's a misconception, I think, with the game. But generally, you use the soul because you're trying to attack the ball. You're trying to get close to the ball. You're trying to look after the ball. But actually, the soul is just part of the toolbox that most players use because the spaces of a premium, and it's how you can protect the ball as well as face forward. We've got things control with feints. So how do you control to feint your opposite man? Again, no touch control or no touch turns, and then engaging control or fixing control. So again, you can break these things down as you work through in terms of small-sided games or futsal, where you can really get into the detail of the perception and decision skills of control. So it's a lot more than just control.
And I think, Parksy, just with that, getting back to where we started around, it's not a technique in isolation, it's technical in relation to the tactical on an individual level. So like what I mean by that is a big thing around control. Whatever the reason for it, you're preparing your next action with your control. And you can get into some of the subtleties of that where you might want to play forward, but you take your touch back to entice someone to then play around them. So, but you know that, and you know what you're trying to do, and you're sort of preparing your pictures, but your touch will often dictate what is possible in your next action, or your control, the way you control it. So it's linked. So that's the importance of the control and how it links, because you actually change the tactical possibilities in that moment. So I just want to draw that.
No, Carrick, that's a good point. That's the thing, isn't it? If you're trying to fix a system and you think it's the system of 4-4-2, but actually the player's control isn't doing that tactical action, and you think, right, I need to fix this because this isn't working. Actually, that's about sliding back down, if you like, into the smaller detail with a different lens to go, actually, the reason why our system's not working here might be because this player isn't got these 1v1 skills to be able to exploit those situations. So, yeah, that's a great point.
I also think you use the word link in there. This links to what we were just talking about in terms of moving and feinting. Because if you're thinking ahead that much, you're thinking about what space you want to create to have the touch that you want to have. So it's not a reactive thing, it's a planned thing, like you say.
Yeah, should we have a look at the videos?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that'd be great. So again, if we just run through the videos here, in terms of, obviously you'll see that there's some control with the sole of the foot. Again, securing and setting up, if you like, in the first movement. Then instep there to play out. Setting up a 1v1. a bit jumpy my end, but again, control with the instep to come out of pressure. Setting up that duel, if you like, that 1v1 duel again, if they can do it. So sometimes we talk about engaging the defender. How do you lock your 1v1 defender? So I think Carrie used the word entice. How do you entice them into your space? So which actually leaves space in behind and between lines. So sometimes in tight areas when you're working so hard without the ball, when you actually have the ball, it's about timing. It's about timing of your control. It's about timing of letting it through your body, past your body, and all those types of things.
I think just link back just quickly to coaching, especially coaching younger players. That's where you need to help them explore and be tolerant of mistakes, because they need to test the boundaries on some of this to see where the timing might be and see what their possibilities are.
Yeah.
So that's really important.
I just thought I'd give. Yeah, sorry, Coach. I'll just start giving an example of that, what we call control to feint. So as this ball's played across here, Doug there will control the ball so that the defender has to come online. So the defender has to protect the inside of the pitch. But what he does is then steps over to control feint or control step, which allows him space on the opposite side to go out the other way. So even in the concept, if you like, of control, what he's doing is controlling, showing him to be able to go the other way.
And just that's great. And just in terms of the tactics piece, that individual battle he might be having with his opponent, it might be that the previous ones he'd actually rolled it inside, 2 or 3 before. So the defender's thinking, he's going to roll inside. He's going to try and, like here, that's what he did there.
That's
Same player. He's rolled inside to maybe change the angle to play a diagonal pass or play forwards. And so the defender's thinking, if that's what he's doing all the time, then suddenly Doug goes, I'm a little bit inside the court. I've got a bit more space outside me this time. I can use the feint and take him on. Yeah,
so that's your intent to attack the ball as the pressure comes. Again, using the sole just because it's a tight and it can secure it up. And this one, like you say, similar, but he knows he's got space on the wide area and he wants to sell a dummy, if you like, to the defender. So it's just giving you, again, just different examples of these techniques that actually need to be tactically, be put tactically in the game. So it's okay having the techniques, but if you can't put tactically into the game, then you're not going to be able to gain advantage against your opposition player, really.
I think often I can talk about football where often we talk about the players find themselves in a position and then look at the possibilities from there. Where really the best players, they know what they've got so clear intentions that actually can dictate the positioning because they know what they're trying to do. So they can almost plan the positions to create different possibilities where if you just get on the ball and then try to decide, what we're trying to do with it, it's far too late. And obviously you've highlighted that, but really that does translate to football.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like the oriented control, you're trying to, we call it engaging and fixing. So sometimes you want to take that ball into pressure to allow passing lines to open up, to allow space in between, to allow space in beyond. So, I think there's a huge, sometimes as coaches, we think it's always got to be out of pressure. But actually, why can't a player take it into pressure? Because what that will create is different scenarios. And we talk a lot in futsal about taking it into pressure so that you have 2 exits out. If you take it out of pressure, sometimes you only have 1 exit out. So sometimes, again, Cara, I think it comes to your point about knowing your player's opposite job. If I take it into pressure, you've got to defend both channels out. If I take it out of pressure, you might come and press me as a negative trigger.
And it comes to just the thing, you want to play that moment on your terms, don't you? And you dictate. Yeah. So you want to get the upper hand, and there's different ways of doing that. But ultimately, you want to dictate that moment. It might be through deception that you make them think they've got you, and then you're off. But that's the ultimate of that cat and mouse, where you want to be in control.
Yeah, definitely control the situation. Yeah, brilliant,
good stuff. So final technique that we're going to look at, travelling with the ball. Again, playing off both sides, the importance of perception and decision are always going to be there. But in terms of the technique, for this one, we've broken it down, starting with open spaces. So typically running with the ball. Now, we've called it travelling with the ball as a technique. So it can encompass running with the ball and dribbling. I think people would probably consider running with the ball to be knocking the ball out your feet and running with it, whereas dribbling maybe to be in tighter areas where the ball's a bit closer, maybe the player's having more touches. I think in futsal, there's certainly going to be more dribbling rather than running with the ball, but there are definitely times in the game, particularly on a counter-attack, where a player might put the ball out in front of them and run after it. But normally travelling at speed in futsal does it like you're rolling the ball with the sole of your foot. I think the other aspect of travelling with the ball, which will probably come out of these clips, is when a player is faced up with a defender and they're travelling very small distances, almost waiting for the player to engage. We've used the word entice today already, before then using a skill or a feint to go around them. And this will probably form part of the tight areas, travelling with the ball, that second block. And then finally, the last sort of area to consider where we can observe and again try and help the players is to understand how and why they travel with the ball to engage a defender. So again, Scoobs has mentioned this. Does that player tactically understand why they're travelling with the ball in a particular direction or a particular speed? You know, like you said, is it to leave space for somebody else? Is it to set up the defender to go around them yourselves? Stuff we've already talked about. I just think these are good things to think about. So anything else or straight to the clips?
We could go straight to the clips, I think. Yeah, that's good. I think, like you say, I think traveling for me in futsal, traveling with the ball generally, if we roll these clips and I'll just talk over them, but traveling with the ball generally would be, counter-attacking in futsal. So grass, the grass game travels a lot. We sort of open up and run with the ball would be on a counter-attack. Dribbling would be, middle to third, where you're trying to keep the ball close to you. And then engaging is when you're really in control of the situation and you're fixing a defender so that you can go and beat them. Or you can open a passing line. So there's three elements where it really comes out strong in the game of futsal in those three phases, really.
And I think maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but if you can then start engaging two defenders, then business, aren't you? And then you're really in control. And if you can engage or fix or whatever words, the different moments, then obviously that's how you're creating overloads and different possibilities as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And that little subtleties about how you dribble, where you dribble, when you dribble, the tactics. If you can engage your opposite man, but you can also engage someone else's opposite man, what that does is give you an overload probably, or a slight overload, or a half overload, so you can get someone on beyond the passing lines. So it's a really key skill that is in trying to create that little bit of numbers up. Yeah, so if we go through these clips again, and hopefully we've got a few different. So this would be that enticing, that engaging. So we're facing forward. He's trying to compromise and create two ways out. One way is to go past him, run with the ball, beat that line. Second way is to drop inside. Some people call it dragging and dropping. But really controlling, Carol, like you said, that moment. The attacker's in control of this moment. And does he want to take that moment on?
I'm guessing you can just travel to change the picture sometimes. So sometimes you play a pass to change the picture, but you can travel to wait, and it's part of the timing so you can dictate the timing yourself. I'm guessing traveling can do that, as well as beating defenders. You might just travel to change the picture.
Yeah, and that's absolutely key, because, like you say, it also gives other people time to get into position, to be in attacking positions. So sometimes you're just punctuating, we call punctuating the movement, in order for people to get up court, to get into attacking zones, to get on the back post. So it's a case of the timing and punctuation, and that one. But this is another good example of maybe fixing a defender to open up probably space that he's seen earlier, because he's on the half turn here. Little drop, players cleared out the middle, all of a sudden protecting and travelling, so dribbling and protecting at the same time. So Parksy, I think you mentioned the soul, but we probably use the soul a lot. Dribbling is to protect with your body. Another good example here of coming out with 2 feet, beating the first player on the wide areas. Yeah.
I think as well, something to mention is when they're traveling in these tight areas, the ball's almost in the middle of their body, like between the middle of their feet, so they can almost take it either way. And those body little feints to kind of wait for the stab foot from the defender and then just slide it either side.
Yeah, and I guess that can be, I'm guessing, Poxy, for you to take it yourself to unbalance the defender, but also to play passes. So you can, with disguise, but also no backlift. And by doing that, it's almost part of the deception again, isn't it? Where the bigger your backlift, the more people can get set to defend.
Yeah. It's like if you go the opposite side, so we have a term of when you're defending 1v1, don't steal the ball. What we mean by that is don't go in and get sold under other people's control, because if you go in and get sold and try and nick it, and they've got 2 ways out, or they can pass out, they might be enticing you in, and all of a sudden the game opens up with overloads. So you have to be really patient in your defending, but it's knowing the opposite person's job again, isn't it?
There's just a couple of words here, Scoobs, for people. Direct and indirect engaging. We've talked a lot about engaging. What might they mean?
Yeah, so that probably goes into, direct opposite player, but and it might be, like Kara says, you're indirect engaging another player. So you're actually bringing your player with you, but indirect engaging somebody else, so that you draw two defenders closer together, which gives you more space on the outside or more space wherever you're trying to do it. So it's just how you engage the defenders directly, your opposite player or somebody else's player that has to come and cover.
Thanks, that's good. So that's the first part of the webinar, where we've tried to dissect just a few individual techniques and tactics with futsal specifically. Now we're going to look at it from a football perspective and how we might see some of the similarities when watching players as individuals. So putting the microscope onto the movement, onto the control, onto the travelling with the ball of these players in an 11v11 game. So I think we'll start the clip, and I think what we'll do is we'll just talk briefly through the initial running of the clip. We'll let it run through at normal speed, almost prep for the stuff that we'll talk about on the second time that it comes through at half speed. And then on the second one, we can start to stop it and pause it and what have you. So say just looking at the control, particularly the movement, how they travel with the ball in tight areas, in bigger areas. What similarities are there between what we saw in futsal and then what we're seeing in football?
I think the key is to look away from the ball when you're concentrating on that moving and feinting. And then the control is the aspect, obviously in that sort of, looking at the ball, if you like. But the moving and feinting, and also the subtlety of it, Cara, about how they drop the shoulders to try and win space in behind, but actually get 2 or 3 meters without winning the space in behind.
Yeah, and also some of the real simple stuff of looking disinterested and then coming to life and drifting away from the ball and all those things. I think you can probably watch this clip 10 times and see something different every time if you focus on the individual actions within it.
Yeah, the deception stuff is key.
And is that including the before, during and after stuff, Cara?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's linked, the before and during after. So knowing what you're doing before with clear intentions of what you're trying to get to and why you're acting disinterested because you want to buy the space later. Do you know what I mean? That it's all part of the same types of thinking that you need to think ahead to prepare for what you actually do as the ball arrives.
I think this is a great example of engaging. So engaging the defender with enough time and slowing, if you like, that pass down with a timing to play safe side, to play around the corner.
And sort of closing the supporting distance can help you do that.
Yeah.
Movement there, the striker away to then come back into the space.
Yeah, and also like leaving the ball here between his feet, so he can go inside or outside. So it's not giving the trigger of which way you want to go. So leaving it in between your feet can go left or right.
And it's just interesting, even that bobbly pass then means that he's just got to get it under his spell first. So that's maybe not an ideal example of or showing the importance of smooth passes, for example, that the smoothness of the technique leads to what his mate can do when he receives.
Yeah. I think there's a great, like here, just checking off because he's got 2v1 on the side. So the defender has to say, but I think it's number 8 here. He has a little, similar to the moving and feinting movement and the timing of it.
There, doesn't he?
So it's a little look to attack space, but it gets himself, another few meters to be able to play a helping pass. And then again, the control, the sole of the foot, quickly orientated, attacked to be able to play round.
But even that little pass to sort of change the picture, a little combination, which might seem like nothing, but it's part of the timing.
Look at the tens movement here. How it affects Dele Alli in this little passage of play.
That first movement, Parksy, we call like the weak side. So you go on the weak side of the defender. So they have to be looking at the ball. So you sort of it's again, carry the deception stuff. You don't have to go massively beyond him to make him defend.
But at the end of it, look how much space he's got then as he pulls away. You talked about cutting off the ball and pulling away to give yourself more space to play forward on the next one.
receiving skills,
movement in the box.
fixing. Like you say, Carl, I think you could look at that so many times and see different things coming out. But, I don't think we once spoken about the system, because in those situations, it's probably, irrelevant really if it's 4-4-2 or...
Yeah, there's a little bit. I think, as the same with futsal, it is in relation to the team strategy and team tactics. Do you know what I mean? So, like, they're not just going anywhere. They'll be in relation to the position.
Yeah.
Be some position, and I know. So there is that. But the solutions aren't always team tactical. It's what are the individuals? What are their individual tactics, possibilities within their individual bit, which actually, in combination with others, that leads to what they can do as a team. So it is that sort of, it's in relation to the team tactics in regards to positioning. And however, we just need to also shine light on what's going on with each individual and what separates because the very best, the subtlety of the very best sometimes can go unnoticed, really. And that's often what unlocks the team tactics.
Yeah, and it's about having that zoom focus on that. Like what we're talking about today is that individual stuff, but you're right. So another, sometimes people think futsal doesn't have positions, doesn't have systems, where it does. We play in 3-1, 4-0, 2-2, and you would put your best players within those positions for a strategy reason, and then you'd have it for a system reason. But then you need these individual pairs, group tactics anywhere on the court or the pitch, so that players can do these well enough so that they can build into your, if you like, your way of playing.
And sometimes, as you said earlier, the difference between receiving facing forwards or receiving with your back to goal has such a big impact on the next bit in your teammates' positioning ahead of the ball and all. So sometimes those individual actions can really unlock the next phase of play, if you like, the next actions. So sometimes, although it sounds like a really simple thing, or maybe someone letting the ball run across the body, just changes the picture and changes the possibilities of how you can attack as a team. And so it's all part of, like, the little bits add up to the big bits, really. It's just helping players explore the subtleties of that, and they all have different tendencies themselves, won't they? And find their own different ways of
I think
controlling those moments. So it's just
I think for also the things we're talking about here today in the individual techniques and skills, it's coached. It's not a put a game on, let be a teacher. Don't worry about it because it's small sided. In futsal, these things are coached. These things are we build a practice around these designs to how do you exploit moving and feinting in this situation, that situation, this when the defenders do this. So I think what's really important for me is that these things are coached.
It's really good, and we've been speaking to other federation schools, and that's the case that in other countries they're doing this at really young ages. 9, 10, 11, 12 kids are being taught these simple but individual techniques and tactics. So then by the time they're getting older, then they start to build on the pairs and the threes.
Yeah, and if you think about the model at the start, I don't know if we're probably finishing off on the last slide, but if you think about the model at the start, and as our futsal development pyramid, and I'm sure football has something very similar. We're talking in the clubs and the development of players. You need these individual things before you can go on to the pair things, before you can go on to the threes. You need these things, and you will slide up and down, and you'll also slide up and down depending on how good you become, your environment, who else you play, what level you play at, those types of things. You'll need to get better at it. But playing under pressure in a lower level or a young age is different from playing under pressure at a senior age at a high, fast, intense. So you have to revert back to it at some point.
I was just about to back you up there, Scoobs, and that's where you have to revisit some of these things, because as the levels go and opponents have got better solutions to counteract what you're doing, you need to keep revisiting it. It's absolutely vital. And I also think a lot of the two or pair combinations and threes and fours is heavily dependent on the individual being able to be in control of their moment. So that has to be right, because a lot of the other stuff comes off that. If people are all really reactive in their individual moment, then the rest of that phase or passage of play will end up being reactive, where actually you want to be in control of the moment. So it has them sort of consequences, I'm guessing, in futsal, but certainly in football, it actually can have consequences on what's actually possible as a team.
Yeah, and that's why I use the term concepts, Cara. You know, we have to know when we're pressed what the concept. We have to know the individual concept of what we're trying to do. Whether we do it or not is a different thing. But what we're trying to do in this situation, what we're trying to do as an individual, if this happens, and there's 101 situations, but if you've got those concepts and that individual can then pull out those tools, if you like, and pull out that decision to what to use when, because it's also dictated by the player's attributes, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Cara, just to finish, and Scoob's touched on it there, you know, we actually have to help the players with this stuff. They're not just going to miraculously pick it up. Could you just give us a real brief idea of some practices or what this might look like in training for those thinking, okay, I want to work on this? What practices might I set up to do this?
Yeah, so I would say firstly on that, a big part of this is reading the triggers and cues. So that needs to be present in the practice. If not, the kids won't have the chance to learn it. So there's moving parts in the picture. So if those parts aren't moving, then how is what they're practicing going to transfer into the game when they're going to be faced with these moving parts, whether they're teammates or opponents? So within practices, that's why 1v1s and 2v2s are really useful, because you've got an opponent, so you can try things out, and it's more real and getting repetition of those individual moments. However, also like 4-side, 5-a-side, and futsal is really good still to practice the individual moments, because one of the things is obviously that once you beat your man, there's a new picture that you need to deal with. So if you only practice 1v1s, they'll get good against their opponent. But as we said, that's in relation to the game, isn't it? So once they've done that bit, that's what they're doing as an individual is in relation to the other moving parts. So it's just around, we need to get some opposition, game related, and 1v1s, 2v2s, plus other small-sided games is great for the kids.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thanks. And direction, I imagine, as well?
Yeah, direction is really important, so you can understand what stuff we're talking about, timing or ways to penetrate and invade and whatever words we use. Yeah, direction is crucial for that. And get goals in. Great goals, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to add that. Direction to your practices for me is, you know, key. It could be a line, it could be a line at each end, you know, for these types of individual things, you know, and also what you trade off your practice. If you have multi-directional, for example, you might not get certain things you want out, but you might get more touches of the ball and someone dribbling all over the place, which is fine if that's what you want. But if you want some of these triggers and cues that Cara said, you probably want the relevance to the game, the ball rolling, the different moving parts, and the direction needs to be in there.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. That brings us to a close. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to you. For those watching or listening, as I said, this is the first in a short series, hopefully. So do look out for, well, hopefully where we're going next, which is paired techniques and tactics, where we'll hopefully build on some of this as we work up that pyramid. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.